thank you so much for everyone for being here today. My special guest today is Bruce Rogers, the Executive Director of CIFA, the Canadian International Freight Forwarders Association. So thank you, Bruce, very much for being here today with us to share some knowledge and insight during this time of COVID and how much it has been affected by the disruption of businesses and logistics during this difficult time. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Arnon. It's an honor and privilege to be speaking with your group today and the people that have joined this call at this point in time. I think it's a really unprecedented times that we are going through, and I'm sure everybody is curious, unsettled, uncertain, and hopefully we can add some clarity by end of today.
Yes, exactly. And we thought about this series to bring to our clients and agents around the world what's happening in Canada and North America and how we're dealing with this issue. And that's why we're going to bring some topics that basically sharing information, as most people, probably some people don't know, but CIFA is an amazing organization in Canada that regulates all the freight forwarders here, and we have such great support from CIFA in terms of information, education, and Bruce will talk about it a little bit into the presentation. So we're going to get started, otherwise I'm sure there will be lots of questions. So let me see here. I'm going to move my, still learning with the Zoom. We'll do, of course, some introductions. We'll talk about the supply chain impact in Canada and North America. We'll talk a little bit about ocean and air freight that has been impacted so much at this time. What's happening with customs in Canada. And then at the end, we'll have some question and answer period, and we would like everyone to get involved if possible. So I'm the host of this webinar, and as I said, Bruce is my guest speaker today, and he's the Executive Director for CIFA, the Canadian International Freight Forwarders Association. We'll be sharing this presentation with you at a later date as well. So who is Mellowhawk? So Mellowhawk is an international freight forwarder. We're based here in Canada. We also have an office in Miami which covers the entire USA. And we have been in business for 17 years. We have 65 agent partners around the world. We're dealing with over 500 suppliers worldwide and over 2,000 clients that are satisfied clients, I hope, and I'm sure. And we covered over 70 countries with our network of agents that we have developed. We are based in Toronto, but I wanted to show this map of Canada because, as you can see, Canada is a very large country, and we have warehouses that receive and take care of our cargo across Canada, but all the documentation and all the quotes and all the control is done here at our head office in Toronto. And CIFA, so I'll get Bruce to talk about CIFA, this amazing organization that has been here for 72 years now, right, Bruce? I think
we're in our 72nd year on it. Yes, we are. And judging by my beard, I've been around for most of it. So we are CIFA, the Canadian International Freight Forwarders Association. We have about 260 regular freight forwarding members that deal in freight forwarding, and we have about 160 associate members. And these are organizations that support the freight forwarding community, such as trucking companies, port authorities, carriers, insurance companies, and things of that nature. Out of our membership, again, the 260 free forwarding members probably represents about 10,000 individual people that work in the freight forwarding sector. And our members are responsible for approximately 95% of the container movements in and out of the country. We have three main pillars of our association: membership, advocacy, and education. On the membership side, we have social gatherings, and we represent the members and deal with any of the inquiries they have at any point in time throughout their business. On the advocacy side of things, it's been exceptionally busy really over the past month as this COVID situation has really escalated within Canada. There's been a lot of government announcements and changes to policy. And as a result of that, it adds some confusion for our membership based on interpretation of regulations that get announced. So we are the escalation point for the freight forwarders. They escalate to us. We advocate on their behalf. So there's been a number of different interactions we've had with government and lobbying associations as we try to position the best forward on behalf of our membership. The last pillar that we have is education, and we provide educational material. All our material is now online. It is available. We are growing beyond the borders of Canada, and we are offering some international training programs as well. But we offer air cargo security, dangerous goods on all modes, the road within Canada, air and ocean. And we also have certificate programs and FIATA related programs onto our educational material. And within Canada, we lead it towards a professional freight forwarders designation, or the PFF, as we refer to it in Canada. On our website, we have a number of resources on our website. A lot of it is open to the general public. And the one here, the COVID-19 resources, there are a number of from different associations, different government authorities. Any information related to COVID-19 within Canada, you can find it directly off the website. So Arnon, that's a fairly quick overview of who we are.
Amazing. And what I want people to know is how much CIFA does for the freight forwarding community in Canada. We have daily e-bulletins, of course, for those who are members, right, Bruce? And we receive daily updates of any issues related to supply chain in Canada and the world. And that's really helpful to maintain us informed of any potential delays, strikes, or customs issues across Canada and the world. So it's the benefits of belonging to CIFA are endless. So I really encourage those agents in Canada that could be watching this to join the organization, because it will be, you see the benefit of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Arnon.
Thank you. Go back here to the next. We're going to talk a little bit about challenges and what do we see in the market right now in supply chain. So the scenario as we see it, so COVID-19, and industry is forced to rethink and transform global supply chain models. Of course, as you know, many offices across Canada are closed. We are essential services, so the freight forwarding community and so many other business are essential services, so we're allowed to be open and work. We have half of our staff working from home, and the other half who decided they wanted to be here in the office. So we have a very small group of people here. We have a warehouse as well. So as you can see, a lot of companies had to rethink that supply chain model in order to adjust to these closures, right? And globally, when the world's economies are impacted, global supply chain is affected. Of course, I mean, if a supplier cannot produce a product, then that's going to delay the entire supply chain for that product. And the ramifications.
Sorry, Arnon, if I could just interrupt on that one, because I just received a notice just a few minutes ago from the World Trade Association organization, and they indicate that they expect world trade to fall between 13 to 32% in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. So that's a significant, and that again on a global scale, not just Canada, but on a global scale, and they're anticipating the recovery to go well in through next year as well, before things are back to normal. So this is really an unprecedented time, and very, very significant to business and the global economy overall.
Yeah, and as we try to be positive always, right, Bruce, and try to come up with positive solutions, there's just so much everyone can do, and we have to continue to work together to find these solutions. But yeah, it's amazing the impact of this virus. And the ramifications as well, they're still unknown, of course, but will be felt from raw materials to finished goods. Yes, I mean, if you don't have raw materials to produce products, again, the entire chain is going to be delayed on this process. Solutions for these issues. So people first, of course, prevent and adapt work environment. I think all of us in Canada and around the world are we have to come up with ways to continue to work, continue to be productive, either from home or if you're able to go to your office. But we had to rethink how to work at these times. We had to learn how to manage cash flow, as you can imagine, manage our receivables and payables, and that has been an issue. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But in freight forwarding, as some people don't know, but some terminals in Canada, they cancel credit that we had with them, just, I guess, precaution. So some terminals we have to pay up front for the terminal fees that these terminals are asking, and it's just because of this crisis. So you have to really pay attention to your cash flow. I don't know, Bruce, if you have anything to say about that. I mean, I'm sure you heard from different agents in Canada about this issue of cancellation of credit.
Yeah, we have, and most of it's on the ground handler side of things, and their business has been probably the most impacted through what has gone on. You look at the airlines, and there's significant reduction in air travel overall. A lot of these ground handlers on the air side are, with the reduction in flights, their staffs has been greatly affected, greatly reduced. And as a result of that, they've got significant cash flow problems because the airlines are not traditionally the best payers in the world. They pay within term, but that term is somewhat extended. So the ground handlers have been forced, and they're getting pushed through their suppliers as well to ensure that they're going to be viable and they have the resources available to pay their bills. And as a result of that, they've put the majority of their clients on a true COD basis. And in addition to that, they've got a number of people working from home in their environment as well. So they've had to do this in order to really in which to improve their operations overall. Now, one of the ground handlers we just heard today that effective April 15th, they're putting in a COVID-19 emergency response surcharge of $35 per master airway bill. So again, not only managing receivables, putting things on cash, but also the surcharges are starting to come now as well. So we're feeling the impact on the air side of things, and I know we're going to talk about that further in the presentation from a cost per kilo perspective. But now you've got additional surcharges being levied by the ground handlers as they start to be able to properly adapt to the new reality of what's going on today.
Yeah, exactly. Just the companies are trying everything they can to stay open and stay functioning. So it's difficult to sometimes criticize, right, the new charges or the new suspension of credit. So
but I'm going to say, from a CIFA perspective, that's the role we play. So we will be challenging some of the surcharges that are going into play. Because it ultimately has a significant impact on the freight forwarders and ultimately on their clients, the importers. As traditionally, as the expression goes, cargo pays, and everything sort of gets cascaded down to the cargo level. And again, there's only so much room to move in that regard as well.
Yeah, and making sure these operators are not exploiting the moment, right, and trying to do sometimes something that is not even allowed to survive. But yeah, it's good that CIFA is keeping an eye on this and receiving reports and sometimes complaints that you can investigate and take it further down to a government level and help. Yeah. Inventory planning, of course, looking for supply alternatives. We all hear every single day now our clients looking for different sources, different places to source material because their original route is interrupted now. So they're looking for locally, they're looking closer. So everybody's looking for an alternative at this time. And in logistics as well, alternative routes and to secure capacity. We know that especially on the ocean side from Asia countries, a lot of these steamship lines are making alternative stops on their routes. So they call one port one week, the next week they call a different port because they just couldn't cover all the ports that they had or the original route that they had. And securing capacity, of course, if you had planning of something that's going to come up every week, you can try to secure space through your freight forwarder and the carriers on containers or air freight. So now there's a huge demand, so people are planning much further ahead to try to get these bookings secured. Demand, essential and non-essential goods and services. And of course, some companies that are essential services, they are open, they're operating. Others are not. They have to close their doors and work remotely. So that's going to affect demand as well. And digitalization, a new supply chain network model. And I'm sure Bruce can comment on this as well. But we see now things, procedures that were done still with paper and locally at some ports, or some customs procedures are being implemented and transformed into a total digital and email of documents and customs clearance, right? Bruce, stamping of some releases that needed to be stamped originally. So they're now implementing ways of doing it via email, so customs can validate those documents without someone going to the counter somewhere. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. There's a lot of initiatives that have been put on by our customs group in Canada. There is the single window initiative, and again, trying to move everything to a paperless environment. They've got the new CBSA, assessment and revenue management, and really trying to modernize their collection efforts overall. But in addition to that, due to the changes with COVID-19 and the social distancing, they really wanted to close as much as possible their customs offices. And as a result of that, they're going to have to go to more of an electronic way of dealing with some of the paper that they've been dealing with previously, and ensuring everything is more automated. So there is some long-range advantages that are going to come out of this. And as they're advancing some of their internal archaic methods of doing business, I think the whole industry and supply chain will benefit at the end of the day through some of these initiatives that are being introduced.
Yes, I remember, a few years ago, CIFA always had pushing for electronic transmission of data and stamping and working with Ottawa to make those changes. And it's kind of funny now in this crisis how things had to be adapted right away and faster in order to help the backlog. And I think that's a positive, as you said, like we're learning very fast how to adapt and how to help shippers and receivers in Canada.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to go to our next slide here. Another challenges and solution scenario: ports are operational and fluid. We know that overall the ports in Canada are working at full capacity, and normally there's some delays, but not as expected, right, Bruce? I mean, we get reports from CIFA every day.
Yeah, the ports are all operational. We're not having any impacts, any delays, and again, the volume is down. We know the volume is down significantly from an import perspective as well as an export, and as a result of that, the ports are operational and fluid. There are no delays being experienced. They're probably operating at their most efficient levels during this period of time. Going further, the transportation network, the rail lines is moving cargo in and out of the port facilities. They're not being impacted whatsoever. And the road network, from a drayage perspective, the road carriers are getting in, so the containers are moving. So the cargo is moving ultimately out to, I'm going to say, to where it's supposed to be. And now I know the next point, Arnie, you want to touch on how it's being affected to the ultimate delivery to the consignee may be a different issue that we're experiencing.
Correct. That's another point. We'll talk more about the ocean scenario, but we know that a lot of, and some people don't know this, but a lot of shippers worldwide would deal directly with the steamship line, book their containers from door to door, and then when the containers get to Canada, their scheduled delivery is with the steamship line, which has a schedule, and it's very organized and very detailed. But sometimes if you have an urgency on a delivery, you won't find a spot right away. So the container cleared is ready to leave the port, and there is no local trucking to take it because the steamship line has a schedule. So this could be again a great point that clients should be using a freight forwarder, because we deal with 2 or 3 trucking companies on a contract. They move containers in and out in a much faster way than having a regular schedule. And sometimes when a container lands in Canada on a Friday and it's cleared and it's ready for delivery, the consignee cannot, the receiver cannot receive the container for whatever reason. The warehouse is closed. And that container, if it's not moved from the port, you're going to pay storage and demurrage over the weekend until Monday you're able to deliver that container. So working with a freight forwarder more than ever now is crucial to find creative solutions to remove those containers, store them somewhere else at our yards or warehouse free of charge until we can make an appointment with your customer. And also potentially deliver, offloading the container at our warehouses and taking the container back to the steamship line. So again, you're not paying demurrage on that container. So there's a lot of creative things that you can work out. But again, at this time, things are moving, but there are backlogs that could happen at all. It is exactly because of this. Importer closed due to government embargo on non-essential workplaces. So again, if the warehouse is closed, you're not going to be able to make a delivery. One thing I want to say about the delivery, the one last point, is that we hear the deliveries by truck can happen. One, the type of equipment that we're finding difficulty, that's what I hear from all our warehouses, is special equipment for trucking. So step decks or transport for oversized equipment. Those are limited because people are very busy, and as you can imagine, there's not that many equipments available at one single time. So otherwise, regular container delivery, it's still moving.
And on that point, Arnon, CIFA, again, the role we have taken on behalf of the whole supply chain is we have lobbied the government to, in the provinces. It's different. The federal government sets certain types of policy, and then the provincial governments have to implement at their level. And when it comes to what's happening within each of the provinces pertaining to businesses, it really is a provincial responsibility, and the provinces are making the rules pertaining to who's open and who is not. So from a CIFA perspective and our membership and the entire supply chain, we are lobbying the government that the non-essential workplaces, although they may not be open for business for the sale of the goods, if they've ordered the cargo, they need to at least accept it and put it into their warehouses so that it doesn't bottleneck the supply chain.
Correct.
Once you bottleneck the supply chain, there is no containers going back. It does bog down from an export point of view, and the whole supply chain will start to grind to a halt. Arnon mentioned previously about the additional surcharges. We've gone out to all of the different suppliers through our membership to see if there was going to be any relief when it comes to storage, demurrage, detention charges. Really, from on the ocean side of things, they've all come back and indicated that no, due to the fact that the ports are operational and the railways are operational, there will not be any relief of detention and demurrage charges. And at certain points of time, the longer this goes on, those costs will they'll be more expensive than what the actual cost of cargo was to get it into the country. And that's going to cause significant other issues with cargo being abandoned and having significant challenges at that point in time.
Correct. And Bruce, you agree with me that at this particular time, more than ever, carrier negotiations and relationships are very crucial. So you having these relationships across Canada with your truckers, your terminals, they are going to tell you like what's happening locally, and you can find a solution together. I think relationship is more than ever so important now.
It is, and that goes back to your original point of the importance of using a forwarder. If you're dealing with the steamship line direct to door type service, those relationships aren't necessarily there, and they change on a daily basis. So the forwarder is usually the best one to contact. They are aware of the changing landscape, what's going on, what's happening, and they're aware of what they can do in the event that there is a problem, and be able to best remedy it on behalf of the importer or the exporter.
Exactly, and also remembering steamship lines as their role, that's what they are. They're steamship lines. They move cargo from port to port, and sometimes they are involved in the delivery, as we talked about. But they're limited in terms of their liability and whole structure, right, Bruce, to produce results like a freight forwarder can.
And that's not their business, to what you said, and that as a result of that, that's why they have those significant charges on demurrage and detention at the other end. Um, I don't know if there's any carriers on this line, but it's been hinted and rumored that this is really a revenue generating opportunity for them, that we as the forwarding community have to just try to limit and really try to resolve overall. So you're right.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if I mean, we talked a lot on this point. I don't know if we covered the suspension of transit and the export deferral of contractual commitments. I think we covered a little
I can
bit
go,
of it.
yeah, very quickly on that.
Yes, please.
Some of the carriers are offering a suspension of transit, meaning that the cargo is moving from point of origin. And what some of the steamship lines have done, there are certain ports that you can store cargo in before it gets to the ultimate, I'm going to say, destination port of discharge. That they will store it because they've got capacity. They'll store it at less cost than what it would be into if it goes ultimately to the final port. So there is some opportunity to save some money in the event that that the importer is not going to be open for business and will not be accepting the cargo. So there is that opportunity. The last point on the exporter deferral of contractual commitments, a lot of business today, they have especially the importers and exporters, they have contractual relationships to move X number of volume out on a given period of time. Based on the fact that the businesses are not open today, you do have challenges from an economic standpoint. The total inventory that people ordered a year ago is probably not going to be the inventory that's going to be required today. So with the deferral, if you can, defer any of those contracts with the exporter and just get them to defer or cancel some of those orders, that will help the supply chain overall. And then that's what was meant by that point.
Great. No, absolutely crucial information. So shippers and consignees can know. Okay, we're going to move on here because otherwise my production team is going to give me hell for going over the time. But anyway, there's so much to cover anyway. So we're going to talk about some air freight challenges and solutions that we've seen. So as you know, demand is on. There's a lot of demand right now on air freight, especially to bring or to send material to combat COVID-19. So we see charter planes from the government coming from China with masks and all sorts of gloves, anything that you can possibly imagine. So, and even some carriers that are flying to back and forth from China now, Air Canada in that case, I spoke to our rep today, they're very busy, the flights are full. So capacity is limited. So you need to plan ahead with your agent wherever you are in order to get a space there. And there's no prediction when those flights are going to go back to a regular schedule. As you can imagine, as you probably know, Air Canada, for example, flew to every major destination around the world. And today they have, changing a little bit today, but it's going to say 5 major destinations worldwide that they're flying. So it's a huge reduction on their schedule and their fleet, right, Bruce? And that's causing so much headache for the air freight industry.
Yeah, and to put things in perspective, just from a numeric standpoint, at Toronto, which is the largest airport in Canada, Pearson Airport, they used to normally handle 130,000 passengers a day. Earlier this week, they're now averaging about 5,000 a day going through that. So you're going from 130,000 on a daily basis now down to 5. They used to handle 1,300 aircraft movements per day. That is now down to 350. By the end of this week, they indicated that, and that is this week, this was an earlier report from Monday, They indicate there will only be 9 passenger air carriers operating within Toronto, and that's reduced from 67 where it was several weeks ago. So that gives you somewhat of a perspective when you're talking about capacity. Capacity isn't there anymore. It's just not. So there is a demand. We're not going to say the demand is what it was prior to when everything was operating, but with that great reduction of capacity overall, there's just no room to move the cargo, and that's a problem that we have today.
Correct. And with that reduction of space, of course, prices are fluctuating daily. You know, our contracts, all of our contracts with the airlines are on hold at the moment. So we get a quotation on a particular lane, and that quote it will last 24 hours before we have to requote again. So it's very tough to give a quote to someone and say, okay, you have a few days to think about it. You don't. You have to act on it, otherwise we will lose the space. And of course, prices are very high for our freight at the moment. So how to move cargo, right? I mean, you have to find different routes. I mean, we talked last week on our webinar about South America, for example, where Miami, and that's one of the solutions. Miami is a major hub for the world, but to Latin America, South America, Central America. So it's a lot of freighter planes from Miami, and they continue to operate. Their rates were still higher than a normal passenger airline, but they're still there. But it takes time from here to Miami. Most people don't know. Everything is pelletized. It goes on the truck. 3 days to get to Miami, 1 day to load on the plane, and then that plane will depart if it's on a regular schedule, if there is delay. So you can imagine from Toronto to Brazil, for example, you can have a 5-day delay for this product to arrive there, and it's air freight because we don't have direct carriers flying there anymore. And of course, Canada and US, we know that Air Canada and some carriers are flying to a few hubs in North America, San Francisco, New York, I think Dallas. So there are some routes, but again, I spoke to Air Canada today and she says, Arne, you have to check with us every single day because that can change at 1 day notice. That route cannot be there anymore. I don't know, Bruce, if you have anything else you want to add on this air scenario.
The only other point I want to raise is just, Air Canada are now operating all cargo aircraft. They've, so far they've operated 15 flights. They've got 4 weekly flights, all cargo coming from Shanghai to Toronto. So the Asia to Toronto movements are ongoing. But again, it's not enough capacity for what the volume is, especially with the movement of the PPE equipment coming in. It's at a critical stage, and we just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, no, and the solutions at the bottom, we cover most of it. And I want to say that ocean consolidation of non-urgent cargo is a solution to, if you can plan ahead. Of course, it's not the same speed as air freight. Of course, ocean is going to take 25, 30 days, depending where it's coming from. But until it normalizes, think about large bulk of your product coming via ocean and working on those consolidations ahead of time, because again, we don't know how long this situation will last. We'll move to the, did I move already? There you go. Ocean, we mentioned some of this on our supply chain slide, but again, ocean shipments are steady and flowing across Canada. Delays are happening due to the lack of equipment on FCL, full container load cargo. As you know, if a bulk of containers came out of Asia and fed different markets, if there was a delay a few months ago, so that equipment is not available at some countries. So sometimes I want to book a container in South America to go somewhere. I go and ask for a container, is not available because that equipment is depleted, that fleet is depleted. So China is not fully operational yet, but there is movement. We see an increase of shipments coming out of China. Is not by any means what it was normally, but we see that it's getting better. I don't know, Bruce, if you want to complement anything here, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's more towards your next point on the blank sailings. We all know about the blank sailings earlier this year, and how many containers that really affects overall in the supply chain. But we're hearing now that there's been 212 additional blank sailings over the next 3 months. They're pre-planned blank sailings, and that's a significant amount again of volume moving out of the supply chain. But while China might not be fully operational yet, China is moving. They are opening more of their distribution centers. The problem that the world has today is that although they're open now for business, at destination and from an import perspective, your businesses are not open. So you're not open, so the orders are not there. So it's really having this cascading, compounding effect overall on the whole supply chain. When we wanted the goods, China wasn't closed. China's opening now. Now we don't want them anymore. So it's really having an impact overall, not overall just for movement of goods, but also the placement of containers. Containers are not in the right areas where they need to be in order to keep the fluidity of the supply chain. And that's going to take several months of which to recover once there is some type of normalcy back into the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we talked about the delivery of containers when they arrive in Canada, depending on the Incoterm that it's being used. So working with a freight forwarder locally to help you maneuver those issues of delay. And another point that came up recently in one of the bulletins is any port can close at any time if any staff is contaminated with COVID-19 for short periods. I'm sure you've heard there's some terminals where if a staff is sick, then they will shut down the terminal until they what's the word, clean or sanitize and make sure it's safe for the employees to go back to work. And I'm sure you heard stories in Canada about that. Solutions. Again, flexible container delivery, storage, and offloading. I talked about that, how a freight forwarder can help you if you need to store that product once it's clear at the port and your customer cannot receive that container offloaded. We talked about cash flow management as well. And huge that I always talk about on my presentations is the importance of Incoterms. We are now Incoterms 2020. CIFA has a full course on Incoterms. I highly advise you to look at that because there are 11 Incoterms and not only FOB and CIF. There's many Incoterms, and it's very, very important that you choose wisely your Incoterms, because when you have a problem, a delay or a loss, the first thing the insurance company is going to look at and ask you, what is the Incoterm used on this transaction, right, Bruce? Like we talk about that a lot, how people need to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical from a risk perspective, as well as the ownership of the goods or the control of the goods. We do have, and thank you for the plug, we do have an Incoterms training session at the end of this month. It is covered over a 2-day period of time, and the information can be found on our website at cifa.com.
Yes, great resources at cifa.com, so check it out after. Next slide here. Let me see. Oh, I jumped. Customs. We're coming to the last slide. So again, the scenario on customs clearance in Canada, customs, ports, and airports operating normally. Clearances are happening. As you know, clearances in Canada is very fast in comparison to other parts of the world. Things pre-clear sometimes before landing in Canada, or 15 to 20 minutes or an hour or even a day when there's an inspection. So Canada is very good in processing clearances. So goods are coming through. Special licenses in certain countries. For example, again, in Brazil, it's a market that we deal a lot. Exporting of COVID-19 related items is now controlled in a way by the government. So you need a special license if you're going to export from some countries COVID-19 protective gear or equipment, because these countries are lacking those products. So they're trying to control the exit of those products. So demands for COVID-19 items is increasing in South America and all over the world. And all cross-border points will expedite clearance of essential products. So maybe, Bruce, you can mention about this topic as well. You said.
Yeah, on essential goods, because of the critical nature of the material coming in and out of the country, or into the country from our perspective, they do have priority clearance lanes set up at the borders from a trucking perspective. Halifax are putting in special measures that they want the information in advance that it's coming in, that it is that critical nature, and they say they will not expedite, but they will prioritize to get the cargo moving and to make sure that it's one of the first things moving through the system from a supply chain perspective as well as a customs clearance. So everybody is aware of the sensitive nature of this material and the urgency to get this in the hands of the first responders. So everybody is putting whatever initiatives they can in place to make sure that this cargo moves to destination as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. That is so good to hear that everyone is working together to make things flow, the best way possible. And of course, solutions and suggestions, communication with your agents and customs brokers at all time is crucial to keep informed if there's any delays or issues locally, and plan in advance as the current situation will continue to evolve over the next several months. So crucial to plan ahead, because unfortunately, I don't think things are going to be solved in a couple of weeks. So we need to think of the long term here. Wonderful. We'll go to questions and answers now. If somebody has any questions for me or Bruce, we don't want to take this call too long. Oops. And Diego is, I don't know if I need to stop sharing my screen, Diego, or I'm able to see the questions on the panel here. Let me see, I guess. Oh, we have a poll in progress here that we ask everyone to answer. What is the biggest logistics pain point right now? So we ask everyone that is on the call if they can make their comments so we see. We have a question from Peter. Let me see here I think I have to stop sharing the screen to see the questions, Diego. I don't know if you can.
Do I put my face on there too?
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Okay. I see a lot of students are on here. And could you and Bruce talk about what the opportunities might be for some of these students? I've spoken to several of them on the private chats while the thing is going on. What would be some opportunities for some students that will be graduating this year and next year in light of the huge changes we're seeing?
The opportunities for students, I think it's, as you know, I'm a great advocate for, as an immigrant myself to Canada, so I'm a great advocate for international students and newcomers to Canada because they bring so much life experience and determination and language as well. Like many of new immigrants to Canada speak 2 or 3 languages, and that's an asset. And I think the scenario is changing where people are finding the importance to hire an international student that has an international experience to bring to their company this worldwide view, and also reaching other markets, because these students belong to, I'm going to call it a community or their home country, and they could be potential sales reps developing that country for Canadian companies. I don't know if I answer your question, but and also I know many people here, a student can get an internship job and then from there establish themselves and prove themselves once they are inside a company. So my advice is always like, get your foot on the door and work very hard. And I always think that Canada and Canadians always value dedication and hard work. So that's my advice. And
I agree with everything that Arnon just stated there as well, Peter. I think there's an opportunity to continue your education during this slow period of time. It really gives people a chance to recalibrate and look at your skill sets and where you're lacking. And there are those educational material programs available to each of the students. In addition to that, I know from a Canadian perspective, one of the biggest concerns I've heard over the last 12 months is that most of the forwarders cannot find good people to hire, and they've really been struggling in order to gain people within their associations or their organizations. So I know hiring has been a significant concern previously. I think through this period of time, there is going to be some fallout and changes within the industry and certain organizations. And at the end of the day, I think people are going to be, their operations are going to be streamlined to some extent, but they are going to be looking for that top-notch talent, top-notch personnel in order to drive their business forward. So I think there's going to be some good opportunities for students to continue to excel in the supply chain industry.
Yes. I don't know if Bruce, if you can see, there's some questions as well that people are asking. I'm going to try to see if I can read. And sorry, guys, because of the presentation, I didn't have my chat open, so I didn't see the questions before. So now I can see what you're asking. So let me see here where we start quickly. Ricardo, did we learn any from Europe? I guess, did we learn anything from Europe and other countries? I'm not sure if it was related to a topic that Bruce and I were talking about. And I don't know if you're talking about the logistics, if we learned something from other countries. I think we're all going through the same scenario. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. We're having shortage of equipment. We're having delays because of flights. We have limitation of air cargo everywhere. So it's not only in North America. Our agents in Europe are suffering, in Brazil, South America, they're suffering, in Asia, they're suffering. So it is a general issue that is affecting everyone. So I don't know if Bruce can comment, but I think that's what you meant in terms of learning what's happening in the world right now.
I think you've covered it. I think you've covered that.
Yeah.
And I guess you could mention some solutions as well, like from Europe. Like, is there any freighter coming that you know about that I guess you could add here?
Yes. From Canada, we're using to Europe. We're using KLM and Lufthansa, British Airways as well. And I spoke to our Air Canada rep today, and there are several destinations. And if anyone is curious, on aircanadacargo.com, they have a COVID-19 tab, which shows the amount of flights to some destinations worldwide that they're doing. They're using passenger planes and putting, of course, carrying all cargo because there's no passengers. And some of the seats even are being used to place cargo on the seats, right? Correct, Bruce?
Yeah, that is correct.
To cover some of these routes.
They're putting the light cargo on the seats and strapping them in to move it. So they're filling up the passenger hold of the aircraft as far as moving cargo. And Air Canada, to your point, Arnie, you mentioned that I know they've ran 15 all cargo flights, predominantly to Europe. So there is a lot of movement going back and forth between the countries. Yeah,
and we're hoping, crossing my fingers for them to normalize operations soon. It will be good. But at least they're running these cargo flights, which is helping as well.
Just another question.
Yes.
Are some of these changes going to be permanent or short term? Like, is it planned for these changes that are happening to be permanent, or is it going to be like a short term type of thing?
Oh, well,
I'll jump on that one if you wish, Arnie. And I think, Ricardo, I think the problem we have is I don't know what short term is anymore. The way things are going in the world today, but once normalcy returns to the industry, I would envision that there'll be enough belly space again back on the passenger aircrafts that they will not be running all cargo between these points as they are today. I think, and we've all experienced from an air side. I was talking to somebody today that was the normal rate of cargo was in the $3 per kilo range on a particular lane, and today the rate was $23 a kilo. So, business cannot afford. Sorry.
Just repeat that because you got cut off. Is it what, from 3 to what,
Sorry.
15?
It went from $3, the rate per kilo, and today the rate that the same person was given on that lane was $23 a kilo.
Oh my God, yes.
So, and you mentioned earlier about, price gouging, and I just had a call from a reporter just before we got on this call. I don't know if it's so much a gouging situation, but they got to pay for the aircraft. And if nobody's going on, the rate is no different than a passenger seat. If nobody's on the aircraft, you're not flying for $200 anymore. The cost increase as well, and that's exactly what's going on with cargo. So back to Ricardo's question, my assumption is the steps that are being put in today from an emergency standpoint in order to move freight will return back to the way things were previously, because it's just too expensive to operate the way they're operating today. They're doing it because it's an emergency situation. Everybody's reacting to the crisis. Everybody wants to do the right thing, but I just can't see this being a long-term sustainable solution based on the pricing that's resulting from this.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Arnold, we have
Yeah.
another question here. Let me read it for you. It's actually a question with two parts. So you mentioned the customs you are dealing with
I see
are
that,
operational.
Diego.
Yeah. Could you please detail?
Yeah, Tiago, right? Tiago
Yeah,
wrote. Yeah.
yeah.
So you mentioned the customers are dealing with are operational. Could you please detail how COVID treatment protection products are being treated? I think you're talking about the importation of these products in Canada, and of course, Canada Customs has stipulated what kind of equipment can be imported either with a Health Canada license. Bruce can help me complete this, or without a Health Canada license. So they're looking at the product, but in terms of the speed of the clearance is happen basically normally. Brokers are working from home, but they always transmitted the entry electronically. So most of the entries, especially for air freight, were done electronically. So the speed, I guess, it continues to flow. Maybe Bruce can add on this particular question.
Yeah, well, it does, and I've received some communications going back and forth with other people that people were looking for. Is there going to be a relaxation on the government requirements on imports coming into the country? And the answer to that question is no. We have certain restrictions in Canada. We put them in place for a particular reason, really to protect the general public. And we're not, at this point in time, the country is not prepared to relax any of those stringent controls they had in place previously. So clearances is happening, but again, you've got to comply with the regulatory requirements from a paperwork perspective, whether they are licenses or whatever else is required.
So Arnold, thank you for answering that. May I just include another question? Even if you have to perform an inspection in the cargo, we still are operational as usual, right?
Could you repeat the question because you cut off a little bit?
Sure. My question is, even if it is necessary to inspect the cargo, if the time to perform this inspection is still as usual as before this COVID pandemic situation?
That varies, and there has been some staff shortages due to COVID-19 and some of the examination facilities. So we have had some examinations are taking longer than they did previously. So I'm going to say there's, from what we've seen so far, there is a slight deterioration in the time it's taken to get some of the cargo examined versus what it was previously. And I think they're also prioritizing. If it's non-essential cargo coming in, it doesn't get the priority attention versus what something of an essential goods would require from a customs perspective. So they will prioritize, put their staff where they can, and try to get things going as quickly as they can. So it really is going to depend on the nature of the cargo and the staffing that's available at the customs facility at the appropriate port.
Yeah. Another question. I'm going to move on to the next. Could you please tell us the most airport, ports, hubs impacted? As we mentioned, I mean, every point of entry in Canada is operating to its full capacity, so we don't see a backlog that I know of on a particular point. We knew a few weeks ago, Quebec, of course, has the most cases of COVID in Canada. The premier there said he wanted to shut down the province and avoid entry from other provinces. So that was, and I know from our warehouse in Montreal that last week the police was stopping trucks transporting cargo and asking them if what they were transported and if there were essential services, and they were carrying a letter from their head office saying we work for so and so and we are freight forwarder. So they're very strict. controlling this because they were afraid to spread, right, of the virus. But we don't see any port that I know, or airport, Bruce can complement, that is it came to a standstill because of COVID. Things are flowing.
Yeah, they are fluid. They are moving. I know the airlines themselves have reduced staff accordingly due to the reduced schedules. The government of Canada have recently put in some emergency relief funding for businesses that have taken a significant reduction in revenues over March, April, and May timeframes. And as a result of that, I know both WestJet and Air Canada are recalling a significant number of employees overall to come back to the workforce. Hopefully that will help, and it could increase the amount of flight scheduling that's going on today as well.
Great. Another question here: how inland and U.S. Canada road transportation was affected due to the pandemic situation? We are doing trucking across North America, so it's moving. Again, as far as I know, it's flowing as well. Bruce, I don't know if you heard anything.
It's flowing, but it's taken a significant reduction as well. And unfortunately, I don't have that. I heard the number previously. I do not have it, so I don't want to just quote a number. But there's been a significant reduction in the amount of trucks that are crossing the border. And again, it's just people are not ordering supplies as they were previously, so it is having a significant negative impact on volume flows. But as a result of that, again, it should improve the fluidity across the border because they're not delayed with the volume of trucks they had previously.
And just one question, what about the cost?
I am not hearing, I haven't heard any issues on the ground side of things, Diego, pertaining to increased cost on the ground transportation. I just haven't heard that they are being impacted to the same degree that we're feeling it on the air side.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question from Ana Sudo from our Canadian Consulate Office in São Paulo, Brazil. Thank you, Ana, for being on this call. Could Arno or Peter provide further info about the SOT and export deferral as solutions? I think, Bruce, you talked about the deferral program.
I did. There's certain airlines or certain ocean carriers that offer this type of service. I don't want to really plug anybody, but if you want to check the MSC. They have specific ports that they will call them. They've got a map on their website as well, and it'll tell you where that cargo can be diverted and held to a certain period of time before it moves to the ultimate destination. So I know MSC are offering that. I don't know about the other ones for sure, but MSC specifically have that map on their site.
Great. So just in case Bruce cut out a little bit, MSC is offering some points where that can be used to help minimize storage and demurrage, I guess. That's what Bruce mentioned. So we don't have a lot of data on that, but I guess we can try to find it and send it to everyone. Are you finding any POEs along the Canadian West border to be more difficult for moving goods through compared to others? Again, no, I haven't heard anything. Delays are happening everywhere, but not to a halt situation. Again, I don't know if Bruce wants to add anything here.
I'm not aware of anything else, Arlen.
Yeah. Peter commented there's a D memorandum that is speeding it, but Health Canada is realizing labeling relaxing, no relaxing on quality. So again, the clearance of product related to COVID, there's some importation regulations, and Peter made a comment here about labeling, but not the quality of the product. Adrienne, do you see the need for more workers in the industry to get items in quickly when things get back to normal? I am sure that when things get back to normal, there will be a rush to restock some places that are lacking products. So yeah, I think there's a rush now, and this rush will continue for several months. Bruce?
No, there is. There's a number of people in Canada that are unemployed at this point in time. So there's going to be a push to get them back. I know what the government is doing from a financial aspect, and the relief that they're offering for the next 4-month period of time. In certain cases, it was greater than what those people were making from a salary point of view. So depending on how long this takes and when that recovery is going to start, I think at certain people at certain businesses are going to be challenged to get people back to the workforce because I think they're making more money now in the situation that they have with the relief that's been provided by the federal government.
Mm-hmm. And a last question here. Given that we are all affected worldwide, is there any country that has an advantage? If so, what are they doing differently? That is a really interesting question, but I don't think I have a comment for that. I think everyone in the world is struggling like we are here. So it's I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
And again, you know, do you believe everything that you hear? You know, like not all governments are responsible enough to report specifically on how they're being impacted in each of those countries. I think this is a global pandemic. I think every country is being affected. And it's just a matter of how quickly you are putting measures in place to reduce the exposure that you have overall. From a Canadian perspective, I think we've put some specific measures in very quickly. And I think our numbers are reflective of what we're doing versus I'll take a country such as the US that really is really in some type of denial of what's going on because of the impact it has to the economy overall. And as a result of that, they are significantly being impacted by this pandemic. So I think it varies, and it really is dependent upon your government officials and how open they are and how quickly they will adapt to this problem.
Exactly. I agree with you. Okay, so we're going to show the results of the question that Diego had on the screen. I don't know how it will work. What is your biggest logistics pain point right now? So confusion, unpredictability, unstable prices next, and then confusion on information. Great. It's good to know. Yeah, so we all feel that, I think. So we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So it's very hard to plan, I guess, the best way possible. You just have to think of every possibility and move forward. Okay, I think that's it, right, Diego? Or you have another, I don't know if there was another question. I think that was the only question, correct?
Yes or no? We have another question, but I guess we can answer Ricardo in private. He's asking about Canada, Brazil.
Perfect. I will do that. Anyway, I want to thank everyone who participated here. Thank you, Bruce, so much for being on this call. So much that CIFA offered to the freight forwarding community in Canada. So I really value your opinion and guidance always. I know how much you do for the organization and for all of us. So I really appreciate your time, and I know how precious your time is. So thank you again for being here. Thank you everyone who joined us on this call. We really, really appreciate. We'll be sharing this with you via email. So have a great day, and watch for the next conversation we'll have next week.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Bruce. Bye, everyone. Thank you.